Well, this is episode 2 of the Nameless Podcast.
Episode 2 of the Nameless Podcast. There's probably a podcast out there
called Nameless
that has the name Nameless Podcast.
Or like unnamed, or I mean, there's a whole Kendrick thing, the Untitled album.
Right.
Yeah, so we're not cool enough for that.
We'll get something.
We had really good suggestions for names.
We did.
So good, in fact.
We had some great comments. Some really good comments on the first podcast, guys. Thanks for being so. We honestly didn't expect anyone to A, watch it, B, comment on it.
It's
so
true.
Thank you.
It was like one of those things where I was like, oh, it's a good name. And I like Googled it. It was like podcast. Googled it, like every variation of something, podcast.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, it's something we should understand that the podcast market's very saturated. We're probably not changing the way podcasts are being made right now.
No.
So for right now, it's either Untitled, which is probably already taken as well. So I think we're the Heroes Journal Podcast. That's the only one that's not taken because it's literally our name.
It's just such low-hanging fruit. I feel like the domain or the name for a podcast is like everyone has an idea for a podcast and then they get a name, then they buy the domain.
Well, here's the thing.
Whether they make episodes or not.
So I think my favorite one was the Heroes Tavern. I think Tanya gave us that one. So thank you, Tanya.
Thanks, Tanya.
Went to the Heroes Tavern.
Yeah.
Like 163 episodes.
Really?
Yeah, and then I went to Tavern Talks, 83 episodes. So it's like people with these names, they're not just like they're about it. They really enjoy making podcasts under the names the Heroes Tavern or Tavern Talks.
We're just becoming like the podcast that talks about other podcasts and then promotes other podcasts on accident.
In the same way, like I think last time we like pitched a product that we were using on accident. Like I guess we're just like setting the time aside now so that when we blow up,
that's true,
we'll have a place for the product placement. I guess we could put our own product in there. Probably more beneficial for us.
Yeah, who knows? But hey, guess what? For a podcast that doesn't have a name yet, we have a different look to the studio today.
Yeah.
Pretty exciting. Definitely have Bert to thank for that. Bert's kind of like the behind the camera, makes everything work kind of guy that every podcast / business needs.
It's true.
So yeah, we are.
Yeah. Let's talk about some of these items on the shelves. Not all of them are like.
Why don't you talk about the shelves first?
That's fair.
Yeah.
So I like to build stuff. It's kind of like my hobby. It's like my alter ego is builder guy Kyle. And I saw shelves like these on Amazon. It was like $20 for like a 3-foot shelf. And I was like, I could make a better shelf for probably the same amount of money. And granted, the Amazon shelves probably would have been easier to mount on the walls. They probably would have come with the drywall fasteners.
Yeah.
It took an entire day, not to build them, but just to mount them on the wall. Bert gets another shout out here. He and I spent like the entire day driving to Home Depot, to Ace Hardware, any like hardware store that you can think of. We were probably there last Friday. But we did it. We finally were able to get the shelves on the walls and get them fastened so they wouldn't fall over. And I mean, that's a lot of stuff on there and it's holding it well.
It is. They look great. I'm a little nervous.
Yeah.
We continue to add weight to the shelves, but they look great.
Well, thank you.
And there's nothing like the satisfaction of knowing that you built them.
It's true.
You can't buy that on Amazon.
And Zach helped build them as well. I gotta give Zach credit.
It's true.
We had a little staining party in the garage. But yeah, let's talk about some of these items. Let's talk about, I mean, obviously you have 2 of our slip cases up there.
Right.
That's
boom.
It's a crowd favorite. Yep. But we have a couple new additions to all of our collections in general, right? We have the Zelda shield.
Yeah, we have this laser cut like wooden Zelda shield that we got on Etsy because many of us enjoy video games and many of us enjoy Zelda.
I'm actually really excited about this section right here in the middle.
Give me the rundown. Who are these people?
So we got Gandalf the White on my right.
Very good distinction.
Stage right.
Love
we have our mentor in the middle.
Ooh, a little Easter egg.
He's
a 3D printed home version, but he is fully 3D modeled.
It's true.
So that's an Easter egg.
One day we'll probably talk much more about that. For right now, it's all you get.
Yeah.
And next to that, we have Bard. So any of you who play League of Legends,
you may know who that is. Bard is my main for League of Legends. Yeah.
Yeah. And then last one is Gandalf the Grey.
Yes, sir.
So I like that distinction between having both of those, but they're all like the wandering mentor, wandering persona. That's why I like them all next to each other. Bard's not necessarily a mentor, but Bard is like the wanderer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're all kind of wandering, exploring.
Yeah.
Not all who wander are lost.
Yeah.
They don't really know what they're doing. It's a fitting metaphor for this podcast in the first 10 minutes of it.
Yeah, I think that like, because Gandalf is based off of like Norse, like Celtic mythology of Odin, right?
Sort of. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's like,
Loosely.
there's higher tiers of like Gandalf. I'm going to get so carried away. Yeah. Higher tiers of like, call them like demigods, for instance, in the lore of the legendarium, as you, if you will, of Tolkien, and Gandalf is kind of he's one of those that comes down to earth and kind of wanders. So.
Gotcha. So those are all like Odin type characters. Is that why it's not? Like that?
Just the relationship between the gods and like the earth
Gotcha.
is like very similar to Norse mythology.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember I listened to that on like, I was listening to a book about mythology, and I think I sent you that chapter because I was like, this is the Lord of the Rings. You love this thing. And
yeah.
I already knew it.
I don't want to say Tolkien, like, you know, command copy, command pasted Norse mythology and then change the names. But it was something kind of to that T. I think it was more of like a repost out of appreciation as opposed to like plagiarism.
Yeah.
No one come for my throat in the comments.
Seriously. I mean, Tolkien did the hard work of making like several languages. So I think that no one would ever say he was lazy.
Definitely not lazy. A labor of love that eventually turned into, you know, a whole series and a whole world. But anyway, so that is a just plastic vinyl figure.
That's just one section of the shelf.
Yeah.
We have some other books. Most of them are actually miscellaneous books. One of Zach's favorite books is a story by Robert McKee. So that had to make the cut. We have The Hobbit over here sneaking in there. We have obviously a hero's journal that I'm blocking with my body.
Yeah. Then we have an open flame in the studio today, which is always a good idea.
Always a really good idea. Then we have books, and then up there we have some more pops.
I've spent an embarrassing amount of money on pops, but you know, that's what I like. So
that's what you like.
So those are the shelves. You'll probably see the background fill up with more and more things as we go on. I think the dream is to fill it like top to bottom and just posters and Hero Journal stuff and like Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, Harry Potter, you name it. All the things we love.
And not pictures. There's actually another shelf over there. We're going to try to utilize this corner and the door. The door is something we talked about a lot, but you can't see, and we're not going to show you in this podcast. But
let's tell the story of the door really quick.
Okay.
Are you cool with that?
You want to, yeah.
I'll tell the quick story.
Lead that one up. Lead that
one up. Okay, here we go. So we've been in this building now. It's called the Heroes Headquarters. We've been here for what? I don't know, like 2 months maybe. When we were shopping for places, we found this really unique building, which we're in now, that's kind of like, it's zoned residential and it's zoned commercial. So it's kind of this weird mix of like businessy, but also there's like an apartment in there. So it's kind of this weird mix, and we all live here and run the business and ship out of the garage. So it's kind of chaotic. But when we were touring this place, you know, Kyle and I are like in our 20s, and we were touring this place with the building owner. And he kind of was like, what's going on? Like, why are these kids touring this? Like, they don't really seem like the type of people that would be looking for a space like this. So there's definitely a lot of skepticism that we sensed from him. He's showing us around the building. First room that we walk in is the one that we're sitting in now. Now, when we walked in there was like medieval decorations all over the place. It was like a former counselor's office. And so I think it was like kind of a tactic to separate people from the everyday world that they live in, to kind of give them like an otherworldly feel. So he is like instantly embarrassed. The landlord's like showing us, he's like, this room's kind of weird. He's like, don't worry about it. I'll change it. Like if you guys decide to move in. And we both look at him and we're like, we see this sword like hanging on the wall. Like when I say this place was head to toe in medieval stuff, like it was hilarious. Kyle and I looked at each other and we knew right away.
There was a tree in here. There was like a straight up, like not like that's a ficus. There was like a tree with like Christmas lights on it.
Yeah.
Like In the room. It was what? Anyway, sorry.
In the room, not even as decoration. Like you had to walk around it. He like, I think uprooted it from his backyard. Anyway, point is, we looked at him, looked at each other, we looked back at him, and we were like, do not change a single thing about this room. Obviously, a lot of it was his furniture, so he had to take it. But the door, which we'll show you one day, I'm sure you've seen it if you look at our social media, is like medieval, completely decked out. And when we saw that, we just had this like serendipitous feeling of like, this is the right space for us. And here we are. He gave it to us. So
yeah, we'll talk about that story a little more in depth and probably in a different podcast.
Yeah.
So that's actually a pretty good segue. The shelves is a better segue than the door, but I digress.
Where are we going?
So the shelves were not something like, I'm not a master builder by any stretch of the imagination. They're not perfectly made. I didn't know 100% how to do it, but I knew we needed shelves. So here we talk about not letting good be the enemy of perfect, or not let perfect be the enemy of good.
Yep.
But there's like a time and place for that. And I wanted to kind of chat with Nick specifically, because you're the person who it handles our product and talks with our manufacturer, our suppliers, and you look at our products with this very fine tooth comb, and it's very slow. It's a very methodical process. We've probably seen like 20 different colors of every single color journal that we have now.
Oh yeah.
And different types of bookmarks and different types of like page density, all of the stuff.
Yeah.
And just what it looks like in your mind when you're thinking about moving quickly for the sake of like keeping up with the growing demand of what we're doing, right? Making a podcast, knowing it's not going to be perfect, or it's not even have a name yet, but knowing that this is the type of information that we need to get out to the world and the type of medium that we should start interacting with people, but also having this like hyper vigilance and this super slow methodical approach to our product, and how those two worlds live in your mind. As like you're our, as John Combs would say, you're our product paladin. So how you're able to handle that,
oh my goodness,
responsibility with that level of, specificity.
Well, being a product paladin, no, just kidding. No one's ever called me that.
Except for John Combs.
Yeah. I don't know if I love that title, but thanks, John. So yeah, I don't know if this is normal. I assume that there's probably a sense like this isn't a very rare thing for someone who, creates something or is like a founder. I'm sure that people watching this are like creatives on some level. You've probably made something before. So, just the way that my personality is like, I like to move fast and I like to like think slow, I guess, if that makes sense. A good metaphor that I've heard before is like, it's a tortoise in like a rabbit's clothing, the tortoise in the hair kind of thing. So it's this idea of you are not afraid to put something good out, even though it's not perfect. But in the back of your mind, you are still working towards something that is perfect. I think that they work together in the sense of knowing that like the path to perfect is paved with a lot of goods. And like the more swings you take at good, the more iterations, the different materials and colors that you see, like will eventually take you to that perfect place. And it's a hard thing because there's always a moment like where when you're iterating on something, and anyone who's ever like written a novel will really understand this, you can edit forever. It's one of the really difficult things. It's like there's never a wall that you hit when you can be sharpening and perfecting and getting your ideas out clearly or whatever they may be. A lot of the times you will just hit go, and then whoever you're sending that to, whoever you're showing it to, will say that's perfect, and then you're good. I think that that's maybe where it comes from. Is kind of like you have to do all the work in clarifying what you're trying to get out. You have to trust your gut a whole bunch. You have to know this isn't it. This isn't it. Not yet. We're so close. I know it's so nitpicky, but not yet. You finally get there where it's good enough for you to put it out, but it's still never good enough to say it's done. And then usually someone will tell you like, thumbs up, this is great. And then you kind of get that feeling of like, this is good. You probably have like an even better version in your head, but what's out there is good enough.
Do you ever feel underwhelmed by that feeling of, so our first edition of the journal had a typo in it.
Yeah.
Didn't have the sword on the side. There were a couple things about the newest iteration of what we've done that's much prettier and much better than the first thing we ever did. Do you ever feel like that feeling of, oh man, this thing's getting a lot better? Do you ever feel like that diminishes over the time, over the more iterations that you have, or do you have a newfound sense of like, this is so much better than the last time I did this? Every single time you do something, you iterate on something new. Because we had like iteration 1, then iteration like 1.5, and then we had iteration 2, right? So how would you explain maybe the 0.5 feeling versus the 2.0 feeling? And then as we move forward, because we've also been playing with some new stuff and how that looks and how that feels in your head too.
Yeah, I mean, iterations are not all made the same, like, but they all have a similar like dopamine hit, I guess. I would say, like, when you finally get it just right, there's like a similar feeling across the board. Obviously, going from like version 1 to version 2 is like a massive jump. But once you get to version 2, you can't really make these big sweeping changes necessarily. Otherwise, you end up kind of cannibalizing some of the work that was done to iterate to get to 2. So you have to move into like 2.1 or even like 2.1, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So it's this idea of, maybe you start with the entire concept, but then once you're in 2.0, you're like, okay, let's take a look at the logo. You take a look at the logo, you zoom all the way in. Let's take a look at the margins in which we chose to foil the logo. Like you just get finer and finer. And as things continue to work themselves out, like you still get that feeling of like, yes, like this is the perfect one. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure if that answers the question.
Yeah, that was great. When you're so from a personal standpoint, just for everyone listening, Nick is more specific about things than I am in general about things. I tend to be a little bit more broad or general. That's just kind of how our personalities are.
Yeah.
How do you find yourself like doing that for your daily routine and just your life? We could talk about mine as well if we want to, but just having that level of specificity on how you like things.
Yeah.
And how does that help you with like, oh, this didn't feel quite right the way I did this today. I need to change, like going to the gym in the morning versus at night, or meal prepping 2 or 3 meals a day versus one or 2. Do you ever find yourself like kind of fine tuning your daily routine or even your goals on like a month-to-month basis?
Yeah. Yes. I mean, in a lot of ways, I think that the way it is most obvious to me when I think about it is probably in language, which is kind of an interesting thing. So I got a communications degree, which is really difficult. In case you guys didn't know, it's not that hard. But anyway, I got a communications degree. So, I shouldn't undermine that. But there's a lot of good value in learning the truth of something that I very much live by, whether it's in the business or it's my own personal schedule, which is like clarity is power, is like what I've always learned about communication. It's never about the message sent. It's always about the message received. So even when you're talking to yourself, your own talk track, you might send this message of like, I'm going to get up every day at 8 a.m. I'm going to be like running a marathon or like a triathlon. I'm going to be this like Olympic athlete. I'm gonna write my novel, all that stuff, right? We have this message that we send to ourselves, whereas the message that is received is like, oh, I actually slept until 9 today. And like, even if I woke up an hour earlier, like I still feel terrible from yesterday waking up at 8, like it's just this interesting relationship between intention and then how it plays out. And I think that the root of that, for me at least, is how I communicate to my future self. So like, for instance, talking about schedule, when I sit down to write in my journal every day, I'm actually writing like my quest for the next day, what the day is, and where my schedule is going to lie for that. Now, when it comes to a to-do list, I try and get painfully specific. And you've probably seen that, like, as we've, mapped out tasks for the whole business. It's like, I'll just continue to press like deeper clarity. It's like, oh, we need to do that thing for someone. And I'm like, no, like, deeper clarity. Like what needs to get done? Do we need to set up a meeting with them first? Well, yes. Okay. So then like, let's make that a to-do list item that is like accomplishable as opposed to like just this big daunting task. So I guess that's maybe an answer into that specificity and how it ends up helping me quite a bit. Makes tasks less daunting, and it helps me to feel a sense of clarity in my life, which gives me a better locus of control.
So, yeah. So in relation to that, so for me, I'm very the opposite. If I give myself a goal, I want it to be as vague as possible because I don't want it to inhibit my ability to do something. If I go for a run, there are a lot of times I'll go for a run and I'm like running and I'll feel really good. So I'll end up running maybe like 6 miles instead of 4 miles.
Right.
Like that.
Yeah.
And I don't like to tell myself run 4 miles today because it limits my ability to go run 6. So every morning in my journal, I write like read, run, work.
Right. Yeah.
Because I know that if I do those 3 things, I'll have a successful day. Whereas if I write down like respond to 27 emails, that stifles me because what if the 28th comes along, and it's like I joke about it a lot right now. It's been really pertinent because we're like moving boxes into the warehouse and we've been doing a lot of labor work. And I've been joking to everyone. I say the amount of work you have is the amount of work in front of you. And I don't like to limit like that number of things.
Yeah.
And I think that that's one of the drawbacks of specificity.
Totally. Yeah.
But I wanted to ask this question, and I lived it with you, so I mean, I probably understand this answer. I may even have a different perspective on it. But starting something like the Hero's Journal, right now it's really easy to be specific because we have specific things to do, right? We have big announcements we want to make for 2021. We have journals to send in our garage. We have YouTube videos. We have podcasts to make. We have all these really specific projects need to get done. So it's really easy to make specific, grounded objectives for the day. Yeah. How did you intrapersonally handle like the ambiguity of starting the Hero's Journal, right? Where you don't know what needs to get done, where you feel like everything is really up in the air and it could be anything. And there's really no way to ground things into specific tasks.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's a big question too. I don't know. I mean, I haven't done a lot of studying for like other people that have started products or founded companies or whatever for the first time. From what I can tell, it's usually the successful entrepreneurs that are famous that you hear about, like their first thing usually isn't their first thing. Because I think the truth is like starting something it's absolute like utter chaos internally. It's like this battle against the world for it to accept this idea that you have. And the way that you win that battle is just by sitting down and doing the thing. And I think I don't want to say it's impossible to gain a sense of clarity in that process. But I mean, I know for the journal, like I would just force myself to sit down at a coffee shop and I would say, I have 2 hours. I'm going to get something good out of these 2 hours. And over time, like, as you invest that time in your schedule and you prove to yourself that you're able to do that and you really do desire to make this thing real, those tasks, they tend to like kind of massage themselves out, become more specific. Because like when you start, you're like product marketing. Like that's kind of what you're maybe thinking about, like, and then eventually it's like product, marketing, customer service. And then it's like product, operations, customer service, employee relations. Like you kind of grow these segments and they become more specific. Tasks become less ethereal. You're able to kind of nail things down. But yeah, when you're first starting, it's like, you're just like grappling with the world. Like you're like, give me an opportunity, trying to get a prototype of this thing just to get someone on board, just to get an investor or a loan or whatever you're trying to do. So it's hard.
Yeah. I, being on the other side of a lot of these calls, for those, I mean, I was in Arizona, he was in Washington.
Yeah.
It was very interesting because I remember being on the phone with you and you were like, I don't know what to do. And I didn't know what to do either. I mean, we were both kind of like trying to figure this out. Yeah. But you seemed like you were really wrestling with something really specific and I didn't know what it was. Yeah. You didn't know what it was either. Mm-hmm. And I think I was like, go home and write down everything you think this journal could be. Yeah. Literally everything. Like take the sponge in your brain and just like release all the water.
Wring it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was funny because I told you that. I remember I was like walking home from the coffee shop that I was working at and it was like 8 p.m. Mm-hmm. So I think it might have been 7 p.m. your time. Yeah. And I get a text. I was already asleep. I got it in the morning, but I got a text and like timestamped like 12:35 p.m. Right? A.m. Midnight. And it was like a 5,000 word document.
Yeah.
And it was just all of the thing. And it was an example of like me being maybe big picture. I was thinking like, yeah, just like think about all the things that you like. For me, it made a lot of sense to do that. But for you, like I find like someone finally put it in perspective of like, oh, I have something specific to do now. And you were able to just let loose.
Yeah.
And we actually ended up using a lot of that information as our original intro content.
Yeah, for the version 1.
It was very inspired, right? It's like people can tell when you're writing something through like the emotional state of like I'm having a eureka moment. And it was to that point had been the best version of anything we had written for the most part. We added some stuff and we definitely put some different practices in, but yeah, it's like, what's that feeling like of when you're wrestling with ambiguity for like weeks or months or even years, and then you finally get a moment of clarity, whether it's someone telling you a specific task to do, or it's just kind of getting over that barrier of, oh, I know what I need to do now.
Gosh, yeah. I even remember going to bed like later that night or morning or whatever time it was. I finished that. And feeling that sense of like, I finally understand this deeper on a level. Like in a lot of ways, that was kind of a crossing the threshold moment. So that feeling, right? Like that feeling of finally getting your idea, your gut feeling, the specifics of it, everything that you've ever thought about that thing. Like getting it onto like a piece of paper, being able to read it, and most importantly, being able to send it, to someone like you who's like, tell me about this. Just tell me what it is. It's like, I mean, to go with like, I don't know, communication metaphors. It's like, it's like talking to someone like in a foreign language and you're trying to understand each other, and you finally like, you link up and you say the right things, or you like make the right motion. If you've ever been to like a foreign country, like you might get that feeling. It's like, oh my gosh, we understand each other. It's it's just a little bit, but like we're on the same page and now we know what's going on. It's like that same feeling. It's like this huge sense of relief. And it's like makes me not feel insane anymore.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, it was funny because obviously I was the first person that you came to with the journal idea, and it was like a million things. Like it was so many different things, and my job was really to help you kind of like put things into places. I was trying to organize these these really ambiguous thoughts, and I remember the first time we worked on it, we sat down, we wrote ad libs, Mad Libs rather. And we were like, people are going to write themselves into the story, and they're going to become, it's going to help them become the hero of their story.
Yeah.
And then we had like text bubbles, or we had little things where over the course of the time, you would kind of be told the story that you're living.
Right.
And then we did that exercise, and we still kind of had the text bubbles. We had these very like ancient looking map, like daily pages.
Yeah.
And
oh my gosh. Yeah.
And then in here, Ryan comes in the picture, and we're trying to like tell this really thoughtful story from our standpoint. Like we were trying to tell this thoughtful story.
Yeah.
And then we were sitting in my apartment in Arizona. You had came down, and we were like, what if they told the story?
Yeah.
Like, what if we use this framework and we let the story be what it is? And we let someone feel what the story means to them. Yeah. And that was like, even though that's even more ambiguous, I think that was the moment we were able to like, we took off running, right? Yeah. That was the biggest turning point, was realizing that someone has the agency to tell their own story.
Gosh. Yeah. I mean, and I think just from like a marketing product standpoint, like I would say that was a light bulb moment of being like, we're not the heroes of the product, like we're the mentors, we're like the chaperones of adventure. We're not like the main character. And I feel like it was us really stepping out of the way, and giving, people that would be potential heroes, like the opportunity to become a hero, instead of being like, shoving these people into the story that we like, and we think they can copy and paste their life into it, and just kind of like, we didn't even really understand what we were doing at that time. Yeah. I remember that moment quite a bit.
Yeah.
It's powerful.
But to what we talked about earlier, it's interesting because it also allows for a level of imperfection,
Of course. Yeah.
Someone's not going to live the journal that we made, right? People are going to live a journal in the way that they want to live the journal because it's which is, I mean, obviously better. And I think that looking back on that, it's something that I'm super thankful that we did. Yeah. But there's 100% a possibility that someone in our position could make the journal differently because we would be afraid that someone would use it wrong.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. Which is such a crime. It's such a shame. It's like, who are we to say other people should like, you know, live out their personal quest this way? I remember really early on, like, because, you know, we sent this first batch of journals out. I remember the first time I heard back from someone that completed a journal. Yeah. It was like literally the first time. I got super excited. And I was like, please, like, just send me all the pictures you can of it. Like, I don't want to like read your daily pages, but just like, I want to see what the journal looks like. And I want to see like what you did with it. And I couldn't have been more surprised. I don't know if you remember this, like, so it was a gray journal. So the cover was colored, like it was colored in, it had stickers all over it. The like the canvas. Yeah. I think they put like a highlighter to the foiling on the outside. The inside was like just littered with stickers. The reflections, like there was like full art pages that Ryan had like worked weeks on that were just like covered with like stickers. And then like people would, and like this person had written like their own quote over it. And I was like, my first thought was like, this is a mess. Yeah. Like, this is not what I had in mind. And my second thought was like, this is exactly what it looks like to be the hero of your own story. Yeah. Because to your point, like if it would have been how we wanted it, it would have just looked the way that we imagined it. But this person had very much taken it, made it their own. And I just felt so special to give them like a canvas for them to tell their story on. Yeah. It was really cool. Yeah. And it's, we could talk about this for hours and hours and hours, but there is, and this is something I like when I think about the things I'm proud of with the Heroes Journal, and all the conversations that we've had and all the time we've spent on trying to develop this thing. I think one of the things I'm most proud of is our attempt. There are probably things in the journal that reflect us because we're literally in the journal, but like, that's not what I mean. They reflect our interests, the way that we think stories are told, stuff like that. Yeah. That's bias that's impossible to get rid of. But I genuinely believe that we did everything we possibly could to try to pull our biases out of the story taking place and put you, now I'm talking like the pun, but like put you as the forefront and allowing people to become like this character. Right. And I think that's way, way more rich. And I think that right there is kind of, if someone was to point to our business and say, where did you really not let perfect be the enemy of good? It was like, we're not telling someone's story for them. They're telling their own story with all the imperfections that it may have, with maybe the days missed on journal days and all that stuff. Like all of those imperfections that happen over a day's period, not let alone 90 daily pages, right? Right. Yeah. None of those imperfections actually become what makes the story interesting. The best part. Yeah. And what makes parts of the story. Seeing this on your bookshelf and you look back and you're like, I went through it. Right. Yeah. Yeah. And it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy. It's so funny because you buy something like this and I think the subconscious thought is, I kind of referenced this earlier, right? Like, it's like, I'm going to be this great hero. I'm going to use this for a full year, every single day. It's going to be perfect, fully filled out. I'm going to have my schedule, my to-do list, my gratitudes, enemies, allies. Like, when in reality, the richness of a story and the richness of an old journal comes from the entries where it's like the pen is smeared on the page and like, you know, it's only the date that's written. There's like one thing in the to-do list that didn't get marked off. Like, there's notes that just say like, today was really hard, and you just go to the next one. Yeah. And like, you can even just like feel your past self, like in your own handwriting, like just seeing that, like even just seeing the amount of pressure you apply to the page, you're like, like, I feel for myself, and I'm so glad that I stuck with it, you know, and you put that on the shelf, and instead of like the perfectly filled out days, at least in my experience, like those are the days I'm really proud of, because it means that I, you know, got up and made the effort to at least write down how I was feeling. Yeah. That's what adds the flavor to the story. Like, no one wants a perfectly filled out 4 journals every day's perfect, every day's clean. That's not a good story, right? Like you need ups and downs, but more importantly, like the camera has to be like rolling. Like in a good movie, like you have to capture those moments. In a good life, you have to capture those moments, the trials and the triumphs. And you're right. I think the journal is a really good way for people to do that if they're anything like us.
Yeah, I guess full transparent. I didn't finish my first journal. I just I gave up on it. For whatever reason or not, I probably just got greedy because I saw the green journal and it was way cooler than the one I liked. Green's my favorite one.
That's one of the hardest parts about about running our business is like being halfway through a journal and then a new color comes out.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
But you got
So I didn't finish my first one. And then I'm probably 20 days away from finishing my green one, which I'm pretty excited about. I started it in July, so about 5 months. But what the difference has been is I'm not using it how I think I should be using it. I don't use the calendar at all. Like I don't even touch it. Maybe some days I'll write a quote in there if I'll write it sideways and it'll look all crazy. I read something I liked.
That's cool.
But because we think differently, right? There are so many specific things that needs to get done every day that if I feel like a failure if I don't write down every specific thing that needs to happen every single day. Because they're all I know these things exist, but they're an impossible amount of things to get done. So writing work and keeping things general. I mean, my goal since the beginning of July has been to get a win every day.
Yeah.
So it's like if I keep it vague, but my pages aren't very filled out. Like I write down my 3 gratefuls. I write like 1 or 2 allies, 1 or 2 threats.
Yep.
Read, run, work, get a win, move on. Like that's if you would look like someone's doing it as like homework they want to get a C on. But I need to do that. I need to know that like at this time of my life, just like writing it down and like being aware of the fact that every day I'm just trying to feel like I got to win. That was enough for that time of my life.
Do you use the notes section at all?
Sometimes I'll rewrite the quote if I like it, or I'll put arrows pointing to it.
Yeah.
Or I will, like write down a thought or something like that. But mostly, I mean, we got a sample of another journal and it's a blank one. So I usually use that one for like a lot of my,
like free form.
Yeah. I did this one time. I don't know if you've ever done this. Have you ever had a journal and you just open it up to a random page and you like write down like everything that's going on in your life in that one page? And you're like, I may never open up this journal ever again. And I may never ever get to this page, but like, it's like burying a time capsule. And like, maybe one day I'll find this, maybe one day I won't, but like right now I need to like write down everything in here. That was a complete non sequitur, but I did that the other day and it was like amazing.
Really?
I really enjoyed it. Yeah. I didn't mark it.
That's interesting. No, I subscribe to two schools of thought. One is, well, this is back to clarity.
Yeah.
Whenever I'm like freeform journaling, so this is not Hero's Journal necessarily.
Yeah.
Like maybe if I flip to the back, but if I have like something I'm trying to really, think out, I'll journal it. I have to kind of classify in my head, is this something I'm going to want to read in the future? Like, am I writing to my future self? Am I kind of wrestling with a thought that I'm going to want to have? Or am I just writing like for the sense of now? And I think the reason why it's important for someone who has a personality like me is like, if I'm trying to be very honest, like sometimes I'll kind of be like almost performative in how I'm journaling. Like I'll use big words or like I'll say things that I think sound really good that won't really like help me in the present, And so what I'll do for that is like I'll freeform write it and I'll rip it out and throw it away.
Interesting.
Yeah. It's kind of like the anti like time capsule.
Yeah.
But it does help me like, I don't know. I think it helps me overcome this idea of like, this has to be perfect when I'm writing it down. It has to be, elegant and well thought out and I can't misspell anything or, as I've grown up, I've kind of gotten away from that, but but there's other times where I'm like, I actually want to read this in the future. I'm okay with myself being a little more like performative. I'm sure my future self will be able to call my old self out, pretty easily. So that's like an interesting trick I learned from a mentor of mine. That was kind of just like, you feel like you're trying to show off for yourself and just like rip it out, throw it away.
Yeah. I don't know if you ever do this, but like I got a new computer and it like backed up my old iCloud.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like looking through stuff. I was like, what is all this stuff? Like all my college notes and stuff like that. And I found a letter I wrote to myself. Like I wasn't even writing to myself. I was just writing like a letter to the abyss of the world.
Right.
It was like, this is how I feel right now.
Yeah.
And I was like kind of down or whatever, what have you. But it was all feelings that I felt like last week or like yesterday. Right. It's all these, maybe not in the same like amount of time, but like I felt these pains and these struggles since then.
Yeah.
And I found another thing, like when I lived in Arizona, a very similar vibe to it. And it's like, it's the not trying to seek perfection in life either. Like I'm not trying to live a life where I don't feel melancholic ever. I'm not trying to feel never sad.
Right.
I'm trying to figure out good ways to manage how I feel, like how I handle myself when I feel those things. And that's what I found those moments do, is that it like breaks down the disguise or the wall that like, oh, I get to run a small business where I get to do exactly what I want to do every day with all my friends. I should never ever be sad. I should never ever feel down. Like by doing that, I'm almost like disrespecting people who have it way harder than me. I'm not saying people don't have it way harder than me, because many people do, and I'm like I try to do what I can to help. But it's like sadness is like a constant, in the same way that happiness should also be a constant, and joy and all these things. So yeah, I want to rip them out because I'm embarrassed about like being that like vulnerable, but also like I keep them because I know that like my future self will find this and be like, yeah, thank you so much, Kyle, for like just telling me how it is.
I've actually been doing this. I don't talk about this too much, but I have a log from like the beginning days of the journal to now in my phone, voice memos that I've I'm not kidding, there's probably about like 10 hours of just me talking to myself via voice memo. So I guess I would consider that like a journal entry, but mostly just like a brain dump. Yeah. And one thing I've learned, because I've gone back and I listened to a few of them, one thing that I've learned to like make them more nostalgic maybe is I add like obviously like your phone adds a timestamp to it, so I know when it is, but I add I'm like, this is how many followers on social media we have, like this is where we're at in our business, like this is how much like money we're spending on like advertising, or like this is, this thing just happened. Just trying to like bookmark very specific, almost like numerical things to like, one day when you hear it, you're like, are you kidding me? Like, I don't know, like we were on a live stream the other day, right? And we were looking through the prototype. Yeah. Yeah. This is not a voice memo example, but yeah, like in one of the reflection sections of like this like FedEx bound prototype, it was like, what are you grateful for? And I was like, I'm grateful that we have like 50 followers on Instagram and our email list has 21 people in it. Yeah. Yeah. It just like automatically like puts a timestamp on when that happened. And obviously it's like pretty immense growth since then. Yeah. And it makes you realize like there's nothing wrong with having 50 followers on Instagram. No way. There's everything right about having 21 people on your email list. It's just like you grow and you almost like laugh at yourself because you realize like putting value in those things, though they may grow, doesn't make you feel different. No. Obviously it helps us run our business better, having more people involved with the company. But yeah, it's like, having 50 followers is almost the same elation as having like 10,000 followers. Yeah, right. It's like, well, it's actually funny. The first 50 are way more important than like the next, 9,950. Yeah. It's like this, I don't know, but you're right. The feeling is the same, like capturing that feeling. And then, it'll probably come at a different point. Like today we shipped like 1,000 journals, right? Yeah. It's like, wow, like what a feeling that was. Yeah. But you kind of have to like scale into it, I guess. Yeah. And it's also like you get better at stuff. We're probably rambling about the same points, but like in June, we had to spend a 12-hour day, and we just like, we hired people and we were just like packing, we were just packing like roommates and stuff, like people who are around in our circles. But it was a big deal. Mm-hmm. It was a really big deal. But like this time, right, we were prepared. We had our supplies. We were able to get our stuff like a little bit pre-packed and so on and so forth. And it really like lowers like the fact that it wasn't painful to do it almost makes it like less exciting. You know what I mean? Well, yeah, you're expecting, because I mean, when you first do it, like in June, for instance, like it's like your bandwidth is tapped. It's like, I can't keep track of any more packing supplies or any more people packing or packages or labels or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like now it's like just that threshold gets raised, the bandwidth increases.
Yeah.
It's not as big of like a crazy thing. So overcoming it, doing 1,000 shipments in a day is less like, oh my gosh, we did it, I can't believe it. And it's more like, like, all right, yeah, this is typical for us now. This is normal for us. So
it was weird though. So I mean, we just transferred back from like a 3PL,
Mhm.
and I was like holding like the packages in my hands, and I was like this is going to someone. Like
I know.
you almost forget that, like when you're not touching your packages that you're sending, you almost like forget that people are trying to like better themselves and become the hero of their story, or give the gift of adventure, right? That saying that saying. It's like you're holding this, like it's like holding the gravity of what someone else is about to partake.
It's true.
And getting them started. And I miss that. I miss that a lot. It was like I spent more time being excited about that than I spent being excited about the fact that we were sending out 1,000. Like,
yeah,
because it was the same thing, right? You realize sending out 1 and sending out 1,000 actually mean very similar things, because that means that someone out there in the world, whether it was someone or thousands of someones, chose to like dedicate the next 3 months to this thing.
It's a really powerful moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I mean, a 3PL, for those of you guys who don't know, it's basically a service that like they will ship your products for you. So it's like someone buys something on your website and it's actually shipped out of a warehouse, probably not related necessarily to that business. They just kind of work together. So that's a 3PL. And by the way, like most companies use these, so it's not like a scummy thing or anything like that. It's a whole segment of business. But yeah, scaling it back and taking it back in house was a really big deal, because for that same reason, like just when you have that physical product, someone else is going to be holding it, and it's like, I'm the founder of this company and I'm hand packing this and I'm sending it to the person that's going to get it, has a whole different like vibe to it than like somewhere in the world this is getting fulfilled in a warehouse and it's going to be shipped and I hope it shows up. Just like a world of difference. And I've really felt that. I don't know if you felt that, but just even having inventory here in the garage, it's just like I don't know, it feels really, really cool to know like one day this garage will be empty and all these will be like out in the world. Yeah. I mean, yeah, God willing. Let's hope so.
I mean, I'm thankful that things haven't gone the way we wanted them to. Yeah. I think that's like, I mean, we've kind of talked about the same thing in this one and then the first podcast of like, accidentally doing a lot of things that we did, but that's for the best reasons.
Yeah.
And we probably said, don't let perfect be the enemy of good 100 million times. But yeah, I think that as we continue to do this podcast and as we continue just to run our business in general, to like reflect, and I mean, I would even challenge all of you watching, like to reflect on the things in life that you didn't intend on happening, but them also being like some of the greatest things that have happened. There are a lot of moments in life where we can feel anxious or we can feel sad. We could be happy. We could be stressed out. All of these things happen. But to know that life is actually better because you have this variety of things happening versus always feeling one way. And they're like, there's this level of imperfection in life. There's a level of ambiguity. Sometimes there's levels of specificity.
Yeah.
That you get every flavor. That's actually that's the best thing that life can give you versus like knowing exactly what you're going to do for the next 10 years.
Right.
Every single day. And how you're going to feel, how you're going to do. It's all of that stuff is maybe nice for one day as you can feel the comfort of knowing what's to come. But when you look back on it, you're actually more thankful for the things that didn't go the way they did. Like, except for maybe getting allergic reactions to the packing supplies. I don't necessarily think of that as a positive.
I was just thinking, I was like, man, he's really saying this so well that you're like, except that one time.
Yeah, no, I
tell this story. That's actually a good entrepreneur story.
So, I used to work at this running store, Super Jock and Jill, if you're in the Seattle area, and they have all this like shoe paper, right? So they sell shoes, running shoes, and running shoe companies, they put paper in the shoes to keep like the shape. Yeah. So I was like,
any shoe,
yeah,
like
any
when
shoe,
you pull the the shoe inside shaped paper out. You throw it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they have like a big recycle bin there, and I called up the manager there and I was like, hey, can I like take the recycling? They were like, what? Why? Because we were actually using that paper to immobilize the journals in our very first journals we ever sent. We would like,
Yes, packing.
we'd pack them. Yeah.
Packing fluff,
paper.
packing protection for journals.
But the thing is that different companies use different things. So some companies were using these little plastic sheets as well. So there was like plastic sheets, there was cardboard, there was all of this stuff. So if you're one of our Kickstarter backers, you're wondering why you got Brooks paper, like Brooks running paper. That's why this is the story. But we were reaching into these giant black trash bags. And at the end of the day, I was like really itchy, and I was like kind of like just like really irritated. I went to go like take a shower, and I looked at myself in the mirror, and like my entire chest and my stomach was covered in hives. My arms were covered in hives. Went to the emergency room. They're like, yeah, you had like an emergency, you had never had an allergic reaction before. I was like, no, I have not ever had an allergic reaction before. So yeah, I took Benadryl and stuff like that, and it was fine. But for the next, until we got to the current system we have now, where I don't have allergic reactions.
Nice.
Which is a big step up for us as a business. I had to like either wear gloves or like long sleeves, and I like had to be really careful what I touched. And it made me really not want to pack, obviously, because I was having allergic reactions. But yeah, that was like we were like in the dirt, like entrepreneur story of just like trying to make things work and using systems that we already had in place and stuff like that.
Yeah, not paying like $30 for packing paper.
$30 whole dollars.
We're like,
I don't think we realized how cheap packing paper was, though. You know what I mean?
I think just the idea of going and buying packing, because we had this was for like Kickstarter orders, right? So this is like our first journals that we ever actually sent. So I don't think we weren't really planning on doing more than this. So we're like, we don't want to invest a bunch in paper.
And the boxes were way bigger than we thought they were going to be. Yeah. So there was like more room and stuff. Yeah.
Fun times.
But yeah, so that's like, that'd be an example of trying to make the best of something and it kind of like biting you in the butt, but also like learning a really good lesson. I don't know.
What you're allergic to, for instance.
I learned, I know what I'm allergic to. So every time I come by those big plastic trash bags that are usually used for recycling, I don't stick my arms in them anymore. But yeah, this was I think we got a little bit more specific.
Yeah, I think
on this one. Yeah, I think maybe next week we'll talk about maybe more business stuff, maybe less.
Who knows? Who knows? I mean, it's always nice to have like a quick timestamp of the business. Like today we're sending out our first batch of pre-orders for Royal Purple, which is really exciting. It's the first time we've ever done a shipment out of our warehouse now. So it's like a kind of an exciting, day for us. It's like a good kickstart to what this is going to feel like more regularly. Yeah. So,
and we prepped our holiday sale. Yeah.
Really exciting.
At the time of the filming of this video, it's not like announced, but all the products and stuff are on the website.
It should be live.
We did all like
so enjoy that.
The future us is going to be like, why'd they say something? But now us is like, we're bragging.
Yeah, that's true.
But
yeah, cool. Well, I guess we'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you. And if you like the podcast, you like the talking head videos, go ahead and hit the like button on this video, or go to all of our other videos and like those ones too. Leave a comment if you have a better idea. Not better, because the ideas for the podcast names were already really great, but they did already exist, so we can't use them.
Yeah.
So if you have another idea for our podcast name, keep throwing them at us. Right now we're the Hero Journal Podcast. Go ahead and give us a subscribe. You don't give us subscribe, do you?
I don't know. I was just trying to see how long you're gonna keep asking them to do, like subscribe, notifications.
This is the stuff. We are YouTubers now. We have to ask for all the stuff.
That's kind of true.
I didn't use smash. I was gonna say smash
that like button. But give us a like. If you're not on YouTube and you're just listening to this, thank you for listening.
Yeah,
we appreciate you tuning in.
Put on all the places podcasts are. So
yeah, when I type my name in now on Spotify, we show up. How crazy is that?
That's wild.
Hilarious.
Does it benefit us for people? Do we have anyone subscribed on like Apple Podcasts or anything like that? Spotify? Has anyone done that?
Yeah. I don't know. I haven't checked. But if you get your podcast on iTunes, yeah, subscribe, please.
And we got
Spotify as well. And YouTube. That's it
YouTube.
for now. Maybe we're on Google. I don't know. Hey, wherever you're listening to this, tap whatever button tells you that we come out with new episodes, because we will be making new episodes.
every week.
That was like the most painful like and subscribe speech at the end of any video ever.
That was.
Mhm.
You know, it's funny because I think a lot of the podcast is like you're just seeing the cuts that we don't keep in the talking head videos.
It's so true.
Like those are so crisp and so perfect. And
I
this
know.
is just us
And we're
being
just like rambling.
yeah.
I love
Like, subscribe. See you next week.
See you next week.